Okay then. Want to see how I made this? Cool, I'll show you. So I made this using a couple pieces of 3/8 inch material and another longer piece of about 1/8. It's about 6 inches by a foot long, which is going to be the base. And I also used a bolt and a couple of screws to use as a hinge. And I started this off by attaching the pieces of 3/8 inch that are going to be supports that hold up the arm to the base, and I welded them on here first. So these are the two supports that are going to be holding up the arm. They're about 3.5 inches long, and I'm going to put a nut on each one on top and then a bolt right through the middle, which is going to serve as the hinge. So these nuts and the bolts that I'm welding are covered in zinc. That's why you see the smoke, and that's why the zapping sound is a little louder on this. And when you're welding anything with zinc on it, you definitely want to wear a respirator under your hood, and you want to make sure you have proper ventilation like always, because this stuff is not good for you. So we got these nuts welded on here. We got the bolts screwing in just fine. Looks like the hinge is ready. So these are the parts that are going to make up the arm that holds the angle grinder. And these are also 3/8 inch thick. And I drilled these holes right here using a Bridgeport machine. These should be a little bit bigger than the holes the angle grinder has on the sides for the handle, which is where this is going to fit in. And now we're going to weld this together and make sure it all fits right. So I tucked these pieces together to try them out, see if they fit on the grinder. And it's about 3 inches and a 1/4 inch on this side. So now I'm just going to fill this gap in, weld it. Yeah. So the reason there's this gap right here is because I tacked it up at first and I tried it out on the angle grinder, but it was just a little bit too tight. So I left this about a 1/4 inch of space here, and I'm just going to fill it in with the welds. Also, another reason why one of the holes on one side is chamfered so big is because I couldn't get the handle to fit in there just right all the way. So it probably would have been easier to just make that hole a lot bigger to make sure the handle fits in there just fine. couple of welds later. Now we're going to attach this longer piece right here, which is going to go attached to the hinge. This is going to bring out the arm just a little bit, and it's going to give it that hinge action. Now that we have the arm all welded up, next thing is to attach it to the hinge. And this part was a little bit harder than I expected, just because it's a hinge, so its function is to move around. And the hard part was getting it to stay in a good spot where I can weld it, because like I said, it's a hinge, so it just wants to fall. And I ended up just putting it on some blocks. As you can see, I struggled here a little bit just because it's a weird angle to weld it at. So this hinge moves pretty smooth. At first I had welded the nuts on a little bit crooked, so it didn't really move very smooth, and so I ended up breaking them off and re-welding them back on. So as you can tell, I'm very pleased about it. This is my first time making a hinge, so I think it came out really nice. Next up, we're going to attach this piece right here that is going to serve as a guide and a kind of stop for the pieces that we're cutting. And for this, I just really want to make sure it's nice and straight, because this is the guide. So if it's crooked, any parts that you're going to be cutting on this are going to cut a crooked line, so it is pretty important that it's straight. Although, because this is a cutting jig, the arm and the hinge and everything really has to be straight, just to get a nice straight cut every time. Next, we're going to weld these little nuts right here at the bottom, and we're going to weld a screw on top right on the arm, so that way we can attach a spring. It's going to hold on to the nut at the bottom and on the screw on top. So that way, every time you pull down the arm, it just pulls itself back up instead of just falling right on you every time. So I tried welding another nut right here next to this first one, but I accidentally melted it all the way through, but that's okay. We only need one for good strength anyway. Anyway, now that we got this thing all welded up, I'm just gonna hit it with a wire wheel to clean up some of the rust on here. Maybe hit it with a little wire brush, some of the tight corners, just to make sure it looks nice and shiny. I like to make sure things that I make work well, and not just that, but they also look kind of pretty. So I'm going to hit it with this 40 grit right here, get it down to clean metal. So now that we got this whole thing all nice and clean, we're going to attach this spring right here. This one is 3.5 inches long, and so it's just gonna hold on to that bottom nut at the bottom and hook onto that screw on top right here. And once it's on there, I'm just gonna close up the spring on top here with some pliers to make sure it stays on there, make sure it doesn't fall off when it's pulling and pushing. There you go, nice and smooth. Now let's try it out with the angle grinder on it. So the thing that's really going to be holding this grinder onto the arm is the handle here. We're going to screw it on from one side of the arm right into the grinder, and on the other side we're going to screw on another bolt that's going to be doing the same thing. So you want it nice and tight so it doesn't move over while you're cutting. Also, while trying this out, I realized that the base was way too long and it didn't give it clearance for the handle to come all the way down. So I ended up cutting half of the base off. So it's only about 6 inches long in the end. And that's just to make sure that the handle on the left side here has clearance to go all the way down and past the base to make sure it cuts all the way through. Another detail I noticed while trying this out is how important this spring is back here, because I considered making it without it. However, that would be less safe because every time you're cutting something with the cutting wheel, you bring it down and the spring pulls it back up. So without the spring, you run the risk of the cutting wheel falling down when you don't expect it to. And as you can see, that could be very dangerous. I don't think this would be exactly OSHA approved, but it's safe enough. And if you got a lot of cutting to do, this gets the job done, makes it a little bit easier. Well, I hope you enjoyed watching the video, because I definitely enjoyed working on this. So I'll be working on more jigs like this in the future. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next one.